have 3 more folks, and we have a whole mess of people coming in on the next bill. So as I said a little bit earlier, we want you to come in and testify, but please give us something new other than what we have heard for the last hour. If you would, please. Joan Ashwell, please. Joan opposes the bill and she wishes to speak.
Hello, I'm KarenAshwell. I'm the election law specialist for the League of Women Voters. I've seen an amendment. I don't know whether this is a different, I don't know how many amendments.
This is the last one, fresh off the press, so chances are pretty good you probably haven't seen it.
But my understanding of the amendment is this is a photo ID bill. I will be brief. I handed in a statement, but I wanted to, without trying to repeat what Kara Eagle just said, the League of Women Voters, when it looks at election laws, usually starts with the Constitution and whether the law is constitutional. This may be constitutional, but our interest in voting and our fundamental belief in voting is that voting is a fundamental constitutional right. It is the right that has more amendments in the Constitution than any other right in the Constitution. And all of those amendments have served to broaden the franchise in this country. Originally, only white men got to vote. Then black men were allowed to vote. Then women were allowed to vote. The reality was, although blacks were given the right to vote after the Civil War, they were not able to exercise that right because of so many laws that put special conditions on black voters. Eventually, we had the Voting Rights Act to try to combat that. When we look at laws that are being proposed in the states, we look at them from a very fundamental point of view. Voting is the right that protects every other right we have in the Constitution. If we don't have the right to vote, we have no say in our government. And the less people who can vote, the less people there are having a say in the government and making the bills for the rest of us. The problem with voter ID bills is that they limit the franchise. They are limiting the right to vote to those who can produce a photo ID or to those who can get past the barriers set up to somehow get their right even if they don't have a photo ID. We know that not every citizen of the United States has a photo ID. We know that not every citizen in New Hampshire has a photo ID. When we create a bill that says, well, even though you're a citizen, we don't want you to vote unless you have a photo ID, we are setting up different groups of people. We're setting up the group of people that will find no problem with voting, and we're setting up everyone else, even if it is a small group, with particular barriers to voting. We're singling them out and saying, because you don't have a photo ID, you have to be treated differently. This is discrimination. This is why the League of Women Voters is against photo ID bills, because they discriminate. And even if you set up all these different ways of trying to get around it, making people do this, do that, do the other thing, go over here, have your picture taken, fill out this piece of paper, get somebody to give you a ride to the DMV, fill out a voucher to get a paperwork. You are setting up a different standard for the people who don't just have a photo ID. You're setting up a different standard by making them follow different rules. That's discrimination. If you want to have ID at the polls, you have to come up with a system that does not single out any groups. We have a voter registration system. In this state, if you want to register to vote, you go in person. You go to the town clerk, or you go to the supervisors of the checklist. You have to answer all the same questions, read all the same forms, sign all the same statements that every other person who registers to vote in New Hampshire does. But now, you want to set up a system where, okay, we've all done the same thing to get registered to vote, but when we go to vote, you people over there are going to be treated differently. And whether you think that's convenient enough for them, the fact is they're being treated differently. When you get to a fundamental constitutional right, states should not be setting up barriers or different treatment for different groups of people. And I've handed out a statement.
Thank you very much, John. Any questions from the committee?
Croc TV.